All right, guys, back with another video. It is April the 21st, Tuesday, and some crazy wind out there right now. Some people are getting snow. My dog's barking because the wind is rattling the windows. But wanted to hop on today, trying to decipher the information that is coming from news media and Facebook, social media, and really trying to put a spin on it that I think is relevant for my clients and contacts, sphere of influence. So it's an opinion, and I think that it's going to give a bit of a different direction than you're going to get from watching the news or a lot of the memes that are out there, portrayed making fun of politicians, because that's really easy to do. Today, I want to talk to you about an article. I think it was the Vancouver Sun. I'll post a link in the description above, and if you're watching this on YouTube, in the description below. Basically, it's saying that 50%, up to 50% of businesses say it's a good probability they're not going to reopen. The government has made very rushed and uneducated decisions on how to handle this entire process. Starting back in January, when they did have credible information that this was a pandemic in China and that we are taking thousands of people every day, week and month from China into Canada and vice versa. They failed to act for 2 months. They didn't do anything for 2 months. And then they cut it off right away. There was zero notice. And basically they said, we're shutting this down for a minimum of 2 weeks, which has turned now into, I believe we're into week 6. So in the process, they've come up with hundreds of billions of dollars in free money, basically. And what that means is that's taxpayer money that you and I are funding to pay people to sit at home. And a lot of the programs that the government has introduced aren't great programs. And that's not a knock on the government. The government never comes out with good programs. There's always a benefactor, and there's always somebody getting screwed. And more times than not, it's the Canadian citizen that is getting screwed. So I'm not anti-government. I'm anti-corruption. I'm not anti-government. I'm anti-incompetence. I'm not anti-government. I'm anti-influence. I believe that we should have a government that represents the best interests of Canada. As an example, the Canadian federal government sent 2 planes to China to pick up PPE. Like today, yesterday, today, last couple days. China has a limit with how long planes can sit on the ground for. And then they got to go because there's lots of things coming out of China. Our federal government sent 2 planes, chartered them, over to pick up PPE. But somebody in the federal government, whoever was organizing this, didn't organize it. And so those planes came back empty. So not only did the Canadian taxpayer pay for the flight, the cost of fuel, the pilots, everybody involved to get there, probably pay to have a loading group to check, make sure that everything checks out and what we're getting is what we've asked for and all that kind of stuff. Not only do we pay for that one way, we paid for that to come back. Fine, because the government's just blowing money anyways. But what's even worse is that they didn't bring back what we desperately need, what we gave to China in the first place. They're not bringing anything back. So we had 2 planes go over there. The list of incompetence decisions that has plagued this federal government, every federal government, not just the Liberals, for decades, is irresponsible and incomprehensible for Canadians. We can't live like this. We can't live like this. It's just, and yet most of us turn a blind eye and sit in our homes and thank the government for sending us $500 a week, which is taxable. What am I missing here? What am I missing here? And so to relate that incompetence to Vancouver, which I think is probably the average stat across Canada, about 50% of businesses are not going to make it through this. And I actually think it's probably going to be closer to 75 or 80% because most businesses aren't well capitalized. They don't have money sitting there. Their lines of credit are used up. They're waiting for 30, 60, 90 days of payments to come in to pay the bills that need to be paid today, but they don't have the cash today because they used that cash to pay bills 3 months ago. That's most Canadian businesses. And the reason is, it's not because a lot of people are incompetent with money and don't know necessarily how to use money. There's a lot of red tape from the government. There's a lot of taxes. Payroll taxes are through the roof. The cost to run a business eats up a lot of cash flow. Just the cost to run it. And then to try and make a profit to take home for your family if you own a business, and then to try and make even more money to set aside for a rainy month or two like we're experiencing right now. Nobody has that. And a lot of times the lending and the lines of credits you get are insignificant. You can blow through them very quickly. So there's a perfect storm that we're in right now that I feel a lot of people are just brushing under the rug. A lot of people are sitting in their house thinking we are going to go back to business as normal. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not going back to business as normal. Number one, when we go back, there's going to be a lot of measures in place to allow us to come back. I'm dropping a video soon. I keep mentioning it. I'm dropping a video soon about how I think we should responsibly open up the Canadian economy. Part of that is pretty much everybody's going to have to be wearing masks. There's going to be sanitizer stations pretty much everywhere. Most large corps, you're probably going to have your temperature taken. There's going to be a lot of challenges just to come back to business. So it's not going to be back to business as usual. And talking to a couple of friends who trade stocks, who are in the market, who do it professionally, we're not coming back. We have printed hundreds of billions of dollars. Hyperinflation through the roof. What does that mean? The cost of goods versus what we're actually buying right now, it's astronomical. We're going to see massive inflation on a lot of products. What do we do? What do we do? How do we fix where we are right now? Well, we have to open up for business tomorrow. Like, we have to have a game plan for next week to start getting back to some sort of normalcy. We aren't going to go back to packing restaurants, but which, by the way, a majority of them won't be around if this continues for another couple weeks. They just won't be. This isn't me trying to be negative. This is me being realistic. We have an oil market that is devastated. The cost of oil right now is in the negatives. There is so much excess oil in the world that they've got ship tankers, hundreds of them, sitting in the ocean full of oil because they have nowhere to put it. This is what's going on. Okay, so until we really understand the gravity of the situation we're in and not wait for Justin to come out every day and say the exact same worded script, answer the exact same questions with worded answers, go back into his house and we all say he's got our best interests at heart. The most incompetent thing we could think. That's just not true. I will give Doug Ford credit. Doug has been on the front lines. Doug has understood to a degree the severity of our situation. The problem with the Ford administration, the problem is that they're handcuffed by the federal government because Doug can't say we're going to open Ontario if the federal government says Canada ain't opening. So Doug's hands are tied, for the most part, as to what's going to go on. So how do we do this in a responsible way? What is the answer? Well, I've got a video hours and hours putting together to try and break down what the stats say, what we feel as business owners need to happen, what some doctors are saying. So stay tuned for that, because I think that's going to be a very informative video. I think, and then I've got an op-ed that I'm producing and going to be putting together that is going to be called Dear Justin. And Dear Justin is going to be a breakdown of Justin's, the Prime Minister's career in office. I'm not going to highlight every single decision that he's made that's been wrong, but because they all have been wrong. There really just hasn't been anything that this Prime Minister has done. Maybe pushing through legalizing marijuana. I think there was a lot of pressure for that. And that happened on his watch. It's probably, while I don't smoke it or partake, I don't know why it was illegal in the first place. So besides that, and even the federal rollout of that, which I understand can be extremely challenging, so I'm not going to necessarily gripe on that, but there's a lot of issues with that too. But the reality is, this Prime Minister and the federal Liberals have failed Canadians. We've lost tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars by not having pipelines to the U.S., pipelines to the West Coast. We have lost hundreds of billions of taxpaying dollars to that. Hundreds of billions. And now we're going to lose even more companies. And you know who's going to be knocking on the door to buy a lot of these contracts? China. You know who has basically staged a Cold War against the world? China. If you want to talk about it, I am totally open to talk about it. The one thing I want to tell you is, in the trade agreement with Donald Trump, President of the United States, trade agreement with the United States, there was a little clause buried deep in that contract. And that contract stated, the clause stated, that if there was an act of God and or a pandemic, that this trade deal would be off. This was signed back in November, December of last year. Okay? What's just happened? A pandemic. So that trade deal is off. And that trade deal included the protectionism of a lot of American companies, and that China would buy hundreds of billions of dollars of goods from these companies. Not anymore. Tariffs from China, on China from the US, gone. There's a Cold War happening, folks. It's a different Cold War. It's different. And there's going to be a video on that as well. How there are hundreds of credible sources talking about these things, and it's not right-wing conspiracy or left-wing conspiracy. It's just what's happening. However you want to put your own spin on it, that's up to you. I'm trying to put no spin on it. I'm looking at the facts and saying, this is what's going on. This is what's affecting Canadians. And what have our leaders done to try and ensure that this isn't going to continue? And the answer's been zero. The answer has been zero. Here's the reality, though. We need somebody in there that can pull the trigger. We need somebody in there that can go and negotiate with China and say, no. That's not how this goes. You can't send our planes back. They aren't leaving. Put our order on there, and we'll tell you when we're leaving. We need someone to stand up and say enough is enough. And unfortunately, neither party, I don't really consider the NDP as a party. They're not. And the Green Party is, nobody on either side has the brashness to stand up there and say, this is how it is. Listen, we need to take Canada back. We need to make Canada a global force to be reckoned with. We have the population, the intelligence, the ingenuity. We have the diversity to do that. We have the resources to do that. But we don't, because we have failed leadership. It's today, Vancouver Sun. Most businesses are going to go out. They aren't going to be able to survive. And this isn't a surprise. This is reality. What's the answer? Well, with the current government, there is no answer. We're just going to keep printing money and making it even harder to sign up, making it harder to get that money. And then once that money's been given and this goes on even longer, then what? We just can't keep printing money. 150 years to hit a 75. 150 years has hit $750 billion in national debt. 150 years. And in 6 months, more like 3, we are going to add $300 to $500 billion to our national debts. Crazy. And for everybody saying, well, we couldn't see it coming, we didn't know it was going to happen, BS. We knew about this in January. We had the ability to act, with the ability to spend 2 months, 2 full months, January, February, and March, to implement plans. If this were to happen, what do we do? And you know what we did? Nothing. We did nothing. We need different leadership. We need somebody with a vision. We need somebody to stand up and say, let's go. We need somebody to say, Canada is first. Canada's first. We can still be a great nation, and we can still take care of other people, but we need to start taking care of our own population so that everybody has the ability to thrive. Not just the rich. Everybody has the ability to be a human being in Canada, not just the rich. We need to help people, not hinder them. And we need a new government. We need a new political system in order to do so. Is that a big challenge? 1,000%. But I think we as Canadians can do it. Let's cut the red tape. Let's get through the BS. Let's become an amazing country with amazing people. Produce fantastic goods. Create amazing technology. I've said amazing 6 times, but it's because it's true. We can do it. But will we? Have a great Tuesday, guys.